Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Don Ma. Here are today's top stories. The Ukrainian delegation meeting with top Trump administration officials in Florida today. We have the latest on the development of the U.S. push to end Russia's war on Ukraine. President Trump says the airspace above and around Venezuela should be considered closed. This just days after hinting at a possible ground invasion. Arian Pasdar standing by live in Latin America. We're following a developing story in Hong Kong. The death toll from a massive high-rise fire has climbed to at least 146. But Beijing warned it could use a national security law to crack down on so-called anti-China protests in the wake of the blaze. And the connection between ADHD behavior in children, their screen time, and how much sleep they're getting. Vital Signs' Brendan Fallon shares insights from a leading child psychiatrist. Consumers spend a record $11.8 billion online from Thanksgiving through Black Friday, with AI pushing traffic higher.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying on Sunday he expects talks with Ukrainian officials to yield more progress toward a Russia-Ukraine peace deal. A Ukrainian delegation is meeting with top administration officials in Florida today to further hash out details of a U.S. proposal. The meeting sets the stage for talks with Russia. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has said Moscow is ready for serious discussions and that the outlines reached by the U.S. and Ukraine should serve as a basis for agreements to end the war.
So this is not just about ending a war. This is about ending a war in a way that creates a mechanism and a way forward that will allow them to be independent and sovereign, never have another war again, and create tremendous prosperity for its people. Not just rebuild the country, but to enter an era of extraordinary economic progress.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner at the meeting in Miami. Witkoff is set to visit Russia next week. Ukraine is seeking international security guarantees as part of any agreement to end the war. It has refused to cede any territory not already occupied by Russian forces. But Putin said the war would only end once Ukrainian troops withdraw from the territories they occupy. Rubio met the Ukrainian team in Geneva last weekend. But since then, the lead Ukrainian negotiator has resigned amid a corruption scandal. Ukraine has sent a new negotiator to the meeting in Florida. President Trump initially wanted Ukraine to agree to a deal by Thursday of last week. He later said the deadline for him is when the war is over. The Russian Ministry of Defense announced on Sunday that Russian air defense systems shot down 230 Ukrainian drones in the past 24 hours. According to Ukrainian officials, the nation's naval drones hit two sanctioned tankers in the Black Sea as Kyiv tries to pile pressure on Russia's vast oil industry.
Ukrainian naval drones hit two sanctioned tankers in the Black Sea that were headed to a Russian port to load up with oil destined for foreign markets. That's according to an official at the Security Service of Ukraine, which released this video on Saturday showing the naval drones crashing into the tankers. The Ukrainian official identified the two empty oil tankers as the Kairos and Virat, adding that both tankers sustained critical damage and were effectively taken out of service. There was no public comment from Russia. Ukraine has been attacking Russian oil refineries for months, using long-range aerial drones to strike far behind the front lines of Moscow's full-scale war against Ukraine. But the strikes on the tankers represent a different kind of attack. Ukraine has repeatedly called on the West to take real action against Russia's so-called shadow fleet, which Kyiv says is helping Moscow export large quantities of oil and fund its war in Ukraine despite Western sanctions.
As tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela keep rising, President Trump calls on pilots to consider Venezuela's airspace closed. This just days after hinting at possible ground operations to stop drug shipments from the South American nation. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar standing by live in Latin America. Arian, good to see you. What exactly did Trump say, and how is Venezuela responding?
Hey Don, good to see you too. Thank you for having me. Yeah, those are great questions. But first, let me give our viewers a recap of the whole situation off the coast of Venezuela. So the US military started attacking small boats, which it says are transporting illegal narcotics from Venezuela to the United States. Now, the Trump administration says that the drugs on those boats would kill tens of thousands of Americans if the drugs do reach the United States. Now, yesterday, Trump said that Venezuela's airspace is to be closed. He took to social media saying, and I quote here, "To all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety." And just 2 days before that, on Thanksgiving, Trump was on a call with service members hinting at a possible ground invasion. Let's take a look at what Trump told those service members.
We've almost stopped. It's about 85% stopped by sea. You probably noticed that. People aren't wanting to be delivering by sea. And we'll be starting to stop them by land also. The land is easier, but that's going to start very soon. We warn them, stop sending poison to our country.
Now, Don, I just want to add here real quick that the tensions between the US and Venezuela didn't start after Trump returned to office. As a matter of fact, when Trump returned to office in January, the US already had a bounty on Venezuela's socialist leader Nicolas Maduro for being a transnational drug trafficker. Don?
Right, Arian. And how is Venezuela responding? The country is now possibly facing a ground invasion, while Trump is also calling for closed airspace. So quite a lot to take for Venezuela, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. It's quite a lot for them to take, I would say so. So yesterday, after Trump's social media post, Maduro, he responded. So Maduro's government, they are calling Trump's comments a, quote, colonialist threat to Venezuela's sovereignty. Now, the statement goes on to read, and I quote here again, "Venezuela will continue to fully exercise its sovereignty, protected by international law, throughout its airspace." Now, Maduro held a press conference on Saturday, and he seemingly tried to resolve the situation using humor. So Maduro says that he's currently more famous in the United States than Taylor Swift and Bad Bunny, for example. Then he went on to say that he might release a music record to get funding and help out his community. Now, Don, I know this is a joke. I know he's trying to joke here, but I mean, what a terrible joke. Even as president, Maduro almost never helped out his community. I mean, look at his people. I mean, Venezuelans are starving. Look at how many Venezuelans are leaving their country. And now he's joking around saying that he's trying to get money, releasing a music record. I mean, just what a terrible joke, right? That's just tasteless, in my opinion. Then he also tried to make an appeal in English. I mean, let's just take a look at his appeal.
Right, I mean, it seems like quite the character Maduro is. But also in other Latin America-related news, I heard President Trump might be pardoning the former president of Honduras. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, okay, so it seems we don't have that Maduro quote right now that we wanted to show you. But yeah, there are other Latin American news as well, Don, which is that, as you just said, yeah, Trump wants to pardon former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez. He is currently serving a 45-year prison sentence in the US over drug trafficking and weapons charges. Now, on Trump, Friday also took to social media again, saying that, quote, "I will be granting a full and complete pardon to former President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who has been, according to many people that I greatly respect, treated very harshly and unfairly." Now, Trump didn't go into details into how Hernandez was being treated unfairly or harshly, but Trump said he doesn't approve of such treatment. And in the same social media post, Trump also endorsed Honduran presidential candidate Nazir Asfura of the Conservative National Party. Trump says that, quote, "If he doesn't win, the United States will not be throwing good money." Don?
Okay, Arian, thank you. Hondurans are heading to the polls today to elect their country's next president. Tensions are high after President Trump openly endorsed one of the candidates. On top of that, Trump on Friday announced a pardon for a former Honduran president convicted of drug trafficking in the U.S. The vote is taking place as many Hondurans face rising prices, corruption, and high levels of gang violence. Two right-leaning candidates are challenging the ruling left, including Nasri Asfara, a former mayor backed by President Trump. He has warned that the ruling party and even the military could try to steal the election. Another conservative contender, Salvador Nasrallah, meanwhile, the governing left-wing party is backing Rixi Moncada, a lawyer and former finance and defense minister, as their candidate. The election comes after the disrupted victory of Juan Orlando Hernandez back in 2017. He's the former president of Honduras that Trump has vowed to pardon. That election sparked deadly protests and a military crackdown that nearly killed 24 people. International observers from the European Union and the Organization of American States have raised concerns about the integrity of today's vote. And the U.S. says it will respond swiftly and decisively to any attempt to undermine the process. Venezuela responds to President Trump's online post that the airspace around the country should be considered closed. Joining us to discuss is Kervin O'Quinn, a former intelligence professional with direct experience in U.S.-Russia relations. During the first Trump administration, he participated in an overt anti-Russia campaign and now hosts the Geopolitical Intelligence podcast, This Week Explained. So good afternoon, Kervin. Your thoughts on President Trump's Truth Social post and the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry calling Trump's comments unjustified aggression against the Venezuelan people?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's good to be here. I think the first thing is we have reached a new point in in human history where now social media posts are now foreign policy. Look, I get why Trump was posting that and why he wants to declare Venezuelan airspace closed. It's the only way to get to targeted strikes within the borders of Venezuela. We saw him quoted both times on Air Force One first, and then with troops during Thanksgiving that a ground attack will happen. What I posited was that this is going to happen either through aerial ISR with strikes within Venezuela's borders on targeted locations, facilities that are making or facilitating the movement of fentanyl, things, the illicit drug trade. The other thing is having the USS Gerald R. Ford in the region in order to launch strikes from that as well. In order to do that successfully, you need to have aerial control of the battle space, and so that's got to shut it down. But what I'm going to say here is that let's not do this over social media. Let's actually, there is a process, especially within the United States, to make these things happen. And if you are going to direct these strikes, then do it in the right way. Let's not go on Truth Social or X or God forbid, Instagram or TikTok and start declaring things as fact.
Can you imagine if we're getting foreign policy decisions made on TikTok? That would be at another level.
I have so many issues with TikTok, and that would just be so far outside.
I know, right? But let me ask you, can the U.S. actually close another country's airspace? I'm not an expert here, but I don't think that is allowed under international law.
It's not. You'd have to declare war on the country, and then Trump has said that he's ready to declare war. Well, you need Congress to approve that. So what we're looking at here is a possibility of continuing this global war on terrorism that we thought we were done with a few years ago. It's what I participated in for 20 plus years, both as a U.S. military member and within the intelligence community. But the way that this would happen is to get air superiority within a region. And you'd have to do that with various fighter jets, and the let me say, the USS Gerald R. Ford is the premier military asset to establish air superiority in any region. So if you're looking at these events and you're trying to factor in what might happen within the future, within predictive analysis, look at these things. Look at what is already happening. Look at what's happening in Puerto Rico. We may be very close to using those global war on terrorism legal effects within a region like Central America.
Okay, we have limited time here, so I also wanted to get your thoughts on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which Zelensky said Russia launched overnight strikes on the Ukrainian capital, killing a person, injuring 19. How are you interpreting Russia apparently ramping up its efforts over the past week?
Yeah, I think what Ukraine is doing here is a smart move. Taking the fight to Russia, as they should continue to do, as they are building a domestic firepower, because they don't know if they're going to have U.S. support in the future. Now, look, as far as Russia, saying that they are getting ready to wrap up the war there in Ukraine. This is something that President Putin has stated recently, but he stated over the last year. He has told, we found out through media reports that Putin has told his top generals that he wants this conflict ended by 2026. Well, we are quickly approaching 2026. And oh, by the way, why would he want this conflict maybe to be either paused or stopped in 2026? There could be another global power that is looking to reach the shores of another sovereign nation and take over a sovereign nation. And I'm obviously talking about Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party looking to take over Taiwan. So Putin might be putting a pause to this conflict in order to support a Chinese invasion of Taiwan.
Wow. I mean, that would just be terrible if that happened. Yeah, maybe I'll ask you a question on that. If China were to decide it's going to invade Taiwan, I mean, how does that benefit China? Because I would imagine in a war, by the end of it, China potentially would be coming out so weak that it would be disadvantageous for China to even start this war.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why a lot of geopolitical thinkers, geopolitical leaders do still have it as unlikely that China would even make a move militarily on Taiwan. What they're looking at is sort of this gray war, cyber warfare on the country. But Xi Jinping has made it clear that before he passes away, before China reaches a point where they no longer have the amount of military-aged males in order to field a military, that he wants to make a move on Taiwan. This is hubris. This is something that he's forward-thinking on. And I think with that hubris, you can put all logic outside of that. And unfortunately, I know that the U.S. military is preparing for this scenario. I would say publicly, I do wish this does not happen. I wish we could all come to some sort of agreement. I do hope, peace through strength happens within the United States, and that we do not see this global conflict that we look like we're rushing towards.
Yeah, let's hope calmer minds prevail in this situation. Let me just ask you one last question on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Do you think it's worth it to say potentially saving thousands of lives, to have Ukraine compromise a bit more in this peace agreement to put an end to this war sooner than later? Or do you think any compromise on Ukraine's part is considered rewarding Russia? What do you think about this?
Wow, well, that's a fantastic question, and I would not want to speak for the people of Ukraine. Understand, I'm not in Ukraine. I've done some work, some intelligence work for Ukraine, but look, at some point, you make a great observation there. At some point, the killing has to stop. So what do you take? Can you come to a compromise? Can you push borders back without letting Russia know that they've been successful? And I think that you can. We've got an episode coming out tomorrow where I talk about this on the podcast, where this sort of this poison pill that Russia could agree to, and then not be able to invade Ukraine any further. We all know Putin wants the entirety of Ukraine and then wants to push more into Poland and into Finland and restore the once, what he would say, great Soviet Union. But if you give Ukraine security guarantees, NATO-like security guarantees, not assurances, but guarantees that if Russia were to invade again, that NATO would send troops, put boots on the ground and fight back against Russia, I think you solve the problem of future aggression like you didn't do when you told Ukraine to give up all of their nuclear weapons back in 1994.
Okay, Kervin, good discussion today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wonderful questions. Always appreciate being here. And as always, stay safe out there.
Thanks. The death toll in Hong Kong rises to at least 146 on Sunday after the devastating fire that took through high-rise buildings. Police say they cannot rule out the possibility of further fatalities, adding that a further 79 are injured and 150 are missing. More than 1,000 people paid tribute to the victims of Hong Kong's deadliest fire in more than 75 years. Beijing warned it could use a national security law to crack down on any so-called anti-China protests in the wake of the blaze. Hong Kongers urge an independent investigation.
The blaze, which tore through 7 high-rise blocks of the Witkoff Court complex on Wednesday, was the city's deadliest in nearly 80 years. An officer told reporters nobodies were found after 2 of the towers were searched, though several pets were rescued. The arrests came as authorities investigated possible corruption and the use of unsafe materials during the renovations at the complex. Reports have also emerged that Witkoff Court residents had repeatedly raised safety concerns over the works. More than a year ago, some had voiced worries about fire hazards, including the potential flammability of the protective mesh around the buildings. Authorities at the time told them they faced, quote, relatively low fire risks. However, police said on Thursday materials used in the renovations were, quote, suspected of not meeting fire safety standards. But the reports of the complaints have shaken the city's residents.
Hong Kong is supposed to be a civilized society. How come there's nobody checking around or inspecting things? Only after so many people have died and buildings have collapsed does the government finally speak up. Even the fire alarm didn't go off. Isn't that tragic?
Some frustrated volunteers handed out flyers near the estate, demanding government accountability. They also called for an independent probe into possible corruption, proper resettlement for residents, and a review of construction oversight.
Coming up, if you're traveling today, be weather aware. Delays and slower traffic are expected in the east. Snowy weather is threatening to disrupt Americans' post-holiday travel plans. Don't go away. If you're traveling today, be weather aware. Delays and slower traffic are expected in the east. Snowy weather is disrupting Americans' post-holiday travel plans. A cross-country winter storm has brought flight delays and hazardous road conditions to large parts of the Midwest. Around 49 million people in the north are under winter weather alerts. Significant parts of Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Michigan will end up with more than 6 inches of snow piling up over the next few days. And winter storm will move to the east. Most precipitation in the east, particularly along the Interstate 95 urban corridor, will be in the form of rain. Major airports that could be impacted include Atlanta, Boston, Denver, Detroit, New Orleans, New York City, Orlando, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C. According to FlightAware, more than 1,400 flights have been canceled Saturday nationwide. The National Weather Service recommends allowing extra travel time and use caution and prepare for slippery road conditions. And now for health tips this holiday season, we're joined by registered dietitian and nutritionist Cindy Chan Phillips. Cindy, good to see you again. I feel like it's not uncommon for some people to feel sluggish or bloated after a holiday, especially after indulging in a bit more food than necessary. Can you just tell us what is happening to our bodies if that is the case, and how do we get back to feeling normal?
Well, happy holiday, Don. What would holidays be without the traditional family dinners and yummy treats, right? So yes, you're right. A lot of people are struggling with maybe extra few pounds and the feeling of sluggishness, as you said. But the good news is that most of the treats that we enjoy during the holidays are high in sugar and high in salt. Both sugar and salt make our body retain water. So the weight, the number on the scale, many of those pounds are likely due to water weight. So after the holidays, when you resume your normal routine, your body, your water weight, you should see your water weight go away. But let me just point out a very common mistake that I see among my followers and among women I talk to is that many of them try to get rid of the post-holiday pounds by overcompensating in restricting their calories. Now, this is a wrong way to go, because what happens is if you do salad during the day, salad at night, you get hungry and you find yourself going back to the kitchen when your family sleeps. And that goes against your goal of losing weight. You find yourself ended up in a spiral of binge. But I also want to have you think about this. Now, why would we easily gain weight from just having a piece of apple pie or pumpkin pie or extra servings of turkey? Why would our body gain weight so easily? Maybe it's not the calories. Let's flip the script. Maybe it's because we let our body get too weak in our metabolism. Our metabolism is our ability to turn food into energy that you feel as opposed to storing as body fat. But there are several things that you can do easily that can help you overcome that. And I'm going to share with you 3 things you can do in your nutrition, in your exercise, and also in your lifestyle as well. Number 1, after the holidays, just go back to your diet, focus on protein. Reach for 20 to 25 grams of protein for each meal. For example, have a palm size of grilled steak sliced over a bed of salad. That's your 20-25 grams of protein. Protein helps you stay full and also support your metabolism. And it also makes your exercise a lot more effective in weight loss. Now, number 2, I know a lot of people think about, well, I've got to spend an extra half an hour on a treadmill or maybe push myself extra hard on a cardio to burn more calories. I totally understand that, Dawn, because we've been conditioned saying that in order to lose weight, you have to burn more calories and fewer calories. Now, the government guideline is that we should aim for 150 minutes per week in moderate to intense exercise. What does that mean? That means you can still carry on a conversation, but barely. Or 75 minutes a week of intense activity. That is, you cannot carry on a conversation. So if you want to lose weight, you might increase the number of minutes to 300 minutes. But I want to say that it's not about looking at the display on the treadmill, how many calories you burn. It's more about aiming to boost your metabolism. And muscle is very important. So make sure that you change up your exercise routine and include resistance and strength training. For example, working with weights, using your body as the weight, such as squats, plank, or sit-up. they all help. But I want also to add, make sure after the holidays are over, you practice self-care and get yourself 7 to 8 hours of sleep that will help you normalize your hormones and help you with the weight loss.
Okay, well, Cindy, that is a very comprehensive answer. You answer in that single response, you answered like a handful of my questions that I was thinking of. Okay, I have this question as well. You know, what do you do if you get that urge to eat unhealthy food sometimes? And I'm going to be honest with you, I do get those urges sometimes. What do we do?
It's very common, Don. Look, after the holiday, you're going to have a counter full of cookie tin and gifts and cake from your neighbors, right? So I think the important thing is I'm going to share 2 things with you. Number one is, as I said, make sure that you have enough protein at your meals. The protein helps you stay full and help you feel satisfied. A lot of time, the craving is really the hunger in the mind. We just feel that we haven't eaten. And a lot of time because you are, our meals are deficient in protein. Number 2 is just give yourself a little pause. And if you find yourself the urge, particularly around 11 p.m., if you find yourself going back to the kitchen, just check with yourself, am I hungry? Am I hungry? So just giving yourself 1 minute or 2 minute pause will help you control the intensity of the cravings. And look, we're holidays here. It only comes around once a year. So let's enjoy the piece of cookie. Let's enjoy a piece of cheesecake. Because after all, food creates memory. And that makes us happy. You know what? You can lose weight easier when you are happy, not the other way around. But practice those tips that we just shared. You will find that you will go from getting stuck to feeling energized, keeping your weight off, and still enjoy what you eat and eat what you love.
Yeah, that is really positive advice, Cindy. Can I just ask you one more thing here? Do you recommend having, let's say, normal size to a larger size dinner versus a smaller size dinner? What do you recommend?
I would recommend it's going for a normal size dinner, not oversized dinner. Here is why. Many people get 60% of the calories from one meal. And guess what that meal is? That's dinner, right? We skip breakfast, we kind of get by through lunch, and then we sit down and have our big dinner. No, you want to spread it out. In fact, you don't want to have majority of your calories at dinner because you know what? When we sleep, our digestion goes down, so just not as healthy. So aim for protein in the morning. Aim for a normal, maybe a turkey wrap for lunch. And aim for, as I said, you can have a grilled chicken over a bed of salad or a bowl of chili for dinner. So spread out your protein amount through 3 meals. That's the key.
Well, all right, Cindy, thank you for talking to us about this. You know, personally, I'm guilty of having larger size dinners. Maybe I should reconsider after hearing your advice. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Data shows consumers are shopping big online for the holidays, while the traditional in-store shopping continues to decline. The boom is driven at least in part by AI-powered traffic. Black Friday online spending hit $11.8 billion, according to Adobe Analytics. That's a 9.1% jump from last year. And the hot items are, no surprise here, video game consoles, electronics, and home appliances. They all saw big gains across both Thanksgiving and Black Friday. A major driver this year was artificial intelligence, along with social media ads, pushing shoppers to retail sites. In fact, AI-driven traffic referrals soared astonishingly 805% compared to last year. Mobile shopping also continued its takeover, accounting for more than half of all online sales. And Thanksgiving Day itself set a record, with consumers spending $6.4 billion online, up from $5.3 from a year ago. But while online spending was surging, in-store visits slipped again. Early data from Retail Next which tracks real-time foot traffic, shows U.S. Black Friday store visits fell 3.6% from 2024. Looking ahead, the National Retail Federation expects the momentum to continue. The NRF projects 2025 holiday retail sales to land between 1.1 and 1.02 trillion, a 3.7 to 4.2% increase over last year. Coming up, the connection between ADHD behavior in children, their screen time, and how much sleep they're getting. NTD's Vital Signs. Brendan Fallon shares insights from a leading child psychiatrist after the break. And welcome back. I'm joined in studio now by NTD health correspondent and host of Vital Signs, Brendan Fallon. Vital Signs offers natural and nutritional ways of optimizing our health. Brandon, it's been a while. It's always good to see you. What are we talking about today?
Today, Don, I want to talk about ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Very common. It seems like everyone you know, everyone you meet has a child who's dealing with this kind of condition. And the kind of, often medication is the first path of treatment for these children. And I spoke to a psychiatrist, a child psychiatrist, who said that's not always the best way to go about things. And he's a celebrity psychiatrist. I'm sure many of our viewers have probably heard of him, Dr. Daniel Amen. He's treated people like the Kardashians, and he does these brain scans where he's looking at the brain to see what kind of activity is taking place when they're using different substances like marijuana or coffee or alcohol. So he's rare in that he's actually looking at what goes on inside the brain. And so I wanted to know from his perspective, what do we do aside from medication? What can be done in a natural way to help kids who may be suffering with an attention deficit?
For the last 33 years, we've been looking at the brain, and I have 30,000 people who have ADD or ADHD of one form or another. And the big lesson early on is it's not one thing. A lot of people are diagnosed with it. Some get better with typical ADHD medications, but many people, those medications actually make them worse. And so we have to stop thinking of psychiatric disorders as single or simple disorders like ADHD or depression or OCD or post-traumatic stress disorder. They all have multiple types. And I actually wrote a book about ADD called Healing ADD, See and Heal the 7 different types. And so stimulants like Adderall or Ritalin help 2 of the 7 types, but they can make 5 of the 7 types worse. And so the hallmark symptoms, what we usually see in our practice, short attention span, but not for everything. It's short attention span for regular, routine, everyday things, schoolwork, homework, paperwork, chores. The things they love, they can pay attention just fine.
Like video games, I imagine.
Like video games, which are a dopamine dump. So Adderall works by increasing the availability of dopamine. That's how video games work. That's how social media works. It's how drugs work. And also distractibility, disorganization, procrastination. They don't do things until someone's mad at them to get it done, and impulse control issues. And ADHD is not a disorder of the moment, right? All of us have a little bit in us, especially when we didn't sleep well or were overwhelmed.
And he was talking about medication, and I just found that point a bit interesting. Maybe you'd like to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear from a child psychiatrist that medication isn't always the answer. And the unique thing about Dr. Amen, he'll actually speak about his family and tell the story of his daughter who has ADHD. And medication in her case has been a godsend, he says, but if she has too much, if she's given more than she's due, it will completely flatten her out. And so medication will have a different impact on people depending on what kind of ADHD they have. And he's talking about 7 different types. I don't know if the average psychiatrist is aware of these different types that Dr. Amen identifies. So if parents want to look further into that, they might consider looking at looking up his book, looking him up online, and looking at the kind of resources that he's putting out.
Okay, and I do believe you brought with you another clip. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this is an incredibly simple way of managing ADHD to some degree. It's one of the natural solutions that Dr. Amen identifies, and it has to do with sleep. You know, we all know if we don't sleep enough, it's going to affect our attention. And it turns out often kids are getting diagnosed with ADHD, and the parents find out it's actually because they're waking up or they're doing things at nighttime that they shouldn't be doing. So this is what he's talking about here.
Well, when you sleep, your brain cleans and washes itself. And if you don't get enough sleep, so 7.5 hours for adults, then trash builds up. And it's much harder to focus. I know when I cross time zones, or I try never to take a red eye, but if I do, I'm not making a big decision the next day because I'm not going to be thinking as well as when I get great sleep. When you don't sleep well, it actually turns off 700 health-promoting genes in your body, which is a very bad thing. And you won't have good blood flow to your brain. So sleep is absolutely essential, which means you have to take your children's gadgets from them. Do not let them have devices in their bedrooms because they were made to be addictive. I believe purposefully made for mind share. They want as much of your child's mind and your mind as possible. And so at night, it's critical to turn them off. I can't tell you the number of patients I have where the parents think the child has ADD, but when we figure it out, they don't really have ADD. They're sleep deprived because they've been playing with their devices in the middle of the night.
You know, I'm so guilty of that, using devices before I go to bed. And from personal experience, it does actually impact your ability to sleep and how deeply you sleep.
Yeah, these things are incredibly stimulating, and they're designed to be that way because something else Dr. Amen talks about in this full interview, we'll leave the link at the end of this, is the kind of dopamine effect that using devices has. And it's akin to using drugs. You know, they're designed with all these bells and whistles, the bright lights, the sounds, to stimulate the feel-good chemical in the brain and to give that kind of almost like an opiate effect. And even as adults, like you, I mean, we struggle with the temptation of these things. So you imagine it's not easy for children to ignore that blissful device that's lying next to them when they're supposed to be sleeping.
Yeah, and sometimes if you look at it too much, you actually dream about the thing that you were looking at right before you go to sleep. And if it's not like, you know, wholesome content,
right,
you might be dreaming about, you know, these bad things, and you can't really sleep because sometimes it's a nightmare and you're terrified and you don't get a good night's sleep. Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Thank you for speaking about it. Pleasure to have you.
Always, Don. Thank you.
And to see that full Vital Signs interview with Dr. Amen, just go to your web browser and enter ept.ms/ADHD, sleep. Okay, coming up, next year's European highlights, Olympic thrills in Milan, whiskey on Islay, innovative design in Frankfurt, gourmet escapes in Crete, and a cutting-edge new art scene in Brussels. Stay tuned after this break for that. Are you craving a European getaway in the new year? Here are the top 5 places to visit across the pond in 2026.
We start with 5th place, the Italian city of Milan. From February 6th to the 22nd, this vibrant city will co-host the Winter Olympic Games alongside Cortina d'Ampezzo, covering roughly 8,500 square miles across both cities and their surrounding venues. These games are set to be the largest in history. They'll also be the most gender-balanced Winter Olympics ever, with women making up 47% of participants. 4th place takes us to Islay, Scotland, a paradise for whiskey lovers. The island's first distillery opened in 1779, and nearly 250 years later, Islay is reinventing itself as the heart of the whiskey world. In third place, Frankfurt, Germany is shedding its old image as a financial hub and emerging as one of Europe's most exciting cities. Next year is the perfect time to visit, as Frankfurt takes on the role of World Design Capital under the theme Design for Democracy. More than 2,000 events will light up the city, from the banks to the River Main to revitalized neighborhoods like Osthafen, a former industrial district now brimming with creativity. Second place goes to Crete, Greece. Famed for its healthy diet and a winemaking tradition dating back to the Minoans of the Bronze Age, Crete has been named Europe's gastronomic region for 2026. A wave of new hotels with gourmet restaurants is opening across the island, celebrating its culinary talent. And the new island airport, set to replace the old one, long voted the worst in Europe, will soon have a partial opening, putting the finishing touch on Crete's irresistible appeal. And topping the podium, we land in Brussels, Belgium. Often overlooked, this European capital is entering a cultural golden era, transforming from a bureaucratic hub to a creative powerhouse. The opening of Canal, Centre Pompidou in November 2026 will turn an unused factory into a modern art center, one of Europe's most anticipated cultural launches. Visitors can expect expansive galleries curated in partnership with Paris's Centre Pompidou, along with live performances, music, film screenings, workshops, and a library, a bold new cultural heartbeat for the city.
Media reports citing anonymous sources say President Trump is preparing to fire FBI Director Kash Patel. Patel told the Epoch Times that he was with the president in the Oval Office when they heard about the reports. NTD News will air the exclusive interview with FBI Director Kash Patel tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. And that's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.